Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to the Beagle Child. We are gathered in this warm abode on a cold December evening with Henry Canine, Philip Stankus, Nathan McBride, and Nicholas Manchester. I'm Alex Latanzi, and off in the stilly night somewhere is Joel Davidson. But tonight we will be discussing
Red as Blood
Thank You
by
by
Tanith
Tanith
Lee.
Lee. Take it away, Henry.
Thank you, Alex. And yes, welcome everyone. As mentioned before, our topic today is this very lovely short story by Tanith Lee by called Red as Blood. It's one that I found a few years ago in a short story collection called Beyond the Woods, Fairy Tales Retold. It's edited by Paula Gurin, and it's an amazing collection of short stories. I heartily recommend it. Um, there are some truly fantastic authors in here, and Tanith Lee shines very brightly amongst them. Um, and I'd like to begin quickly by reading this little bit of biography that Miss Gurin includes at the end of the story that's about Tanith Lee. Tanith Lee was born in London in 1947. She died peacefully after a long illness in Hastings, East Sussex in 2015. After grammar school, she worked at a number of jobs and at age 25 had 1 year at art college. When Dow Books published her novel, The Birth Grave, she became a professional full time writer. Publications include approximately 90 novels and collections and well over 300 short stories. She also wrote for television and radio. Lee won several awards, including 2 World Fantasy Awards for short fiction. In 2009, she was made a Grand Master of Horror and honored with the World Fantasy Convention Lifetime Achievement Award in 2013. She was married to writer artist John Kane. So that includes the author introduction. Since reading and finding and reading this story, Miss Tanith Lee's become one of my favorite fantasy authors of that I've just ever. She's in my own personal pantheon of favorites. The story is amazing and wonderful and eerie and a real treat to read. And I'm so glad to be here with my friends here to talk about it, and also with the audience here as well. Um, so, with that brief introduction wrapped up, I just want to uh, ask the panel here, what were your first impressions after reading this story?
For me, it's a very beautiful, it's a very good length. I feel like it's just the right length for a short story. That if I just want to sit down and read a story, and it's playing a great deal with the story of Snow White, but I feel like it does it in a very I don't know, the fairy tale rewritings are there are very many of them. And I feel like this one does it. I don't know, the word that comes to mind is tastefully, but it's
That's wonderful.
yeah. Yeah, no pun intended, but that does work,
That's a
doesn't
great.
it?
That's
Um
great.
yeah, but the it it's just so different by from the original story, but not in the way that I would expect. And I could go into more detail on that, but I'll let everybody else share their first impressions here.
I would say it's very rich and like
Mm.
you know and even though it's differing from the original so to speak, it almost feels like it's a deeper original. Like it feels like it's coming from that same realm of the original of those stories. And so yeah, it was a very like it was a welcome kind of retelling. I don't know, you didn't feel like the author had me. I mean, I didn't, but it seemed like she didn't really have like an axe to grind. Yeah, no, it was good. And yeah, the length was it did not overstay its welcome. It felt in that sense like a fairy tale. It was not overlong.
To me, it feels like a version of the story that's evolved very naturally. You have certain stories that are so old and they just evolve over time. Like an example might be the Ark story, like Noah's Ark. How lots of different cultures have it, but they all have kind of their own twist on it. And this feels like Snow White has been told so many times, and then maybe this culture kind of adds vampires to it, and then the church gets their hands on it and they make it about Jesus, but it's not told in a way that feels like these things are just wedged in there. It does feel like it's a story that could have evolved naturally, just transitively throughout time and location, and yeah, but told very well. Like I said, it just seems very natural.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think as both Nathan and Alex hit on its succinctness and the fact that it doesn't overstay its welcome, I think that's very important for it feeling like a fairy tale because the details that you read in something like the Grimm's fairy tale, um, each one is very specific, usually a very deep symbolic meaning to that detail that if it were left without it, the meaning of the story would be changed. So there's not a lot of superfluous description. Like everything feels like it has its proper place and has a part in explaining the mythos of the story and like what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah, um, tremendously enjoyed it. Very rich, very dark with a concept that you know for those we're of course assuming that the listener has read the story already. But the concept being that Snow White manifesting as a vampire sounds like something that written today could be absurdly stupid, and it's not. The way that Lee handles it is so beautifully done and so powerful that I'm blown away. I think it's excellent.
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad. I'm so glad to hear that you all enjoyed it. And, I found it when I remember, I can't remember where I was when I first read it, but I remember that the first impression, it was just breathtaking. And as Phil alluded to earlier, yes, Red as Blood is a retelling of Snow White and an incredibly in an innovative way that's true to the heart. I believe it's true to the heart of the story, and is not. It's not a story that comes at the expense of the old story. It's not. It's a very loving homage to Snow White, while at the same time being its own unique, wondrous creature. This story is is in it itself a creature and a very fascinating creature as well. And reading it today, getting ready for earlier today, getting ready for tonight, I was amazed at how well Tanith Lee was able to blend a number of types of storytelling all into one. There's almost a little bit of everything. You have fantasy, and you have fairy tale, of course. You have mythology, the type of mythology that she uses, or the yes, I think type would be the best word. She uses Christianity as a mythos, which is wonderful, and not something that is seen too often, at least not in my readings. And so she blends that in well, and it's a it's just wonderfully layered, and you don't, and there are times where, another thing to Tanith Lee's credit, that she's able to play around with the notion of, okay, who's the good guy and who's the bad guy here. She sort of blurs those lines, but she does so in a way that she doesn't negate the importance of a good guy and bad guy. It's still, there are real consequences, either good or bad. This is actually, it's a fight not only for the kingdom, as we'll talk about as we start the story, talking about the story proper at the beginning. The kingdom is very much in jeopardy by Bianca, by who is Snow White, and her nature. By her nature, she puts the kingdom at risk. But so it's not only a fight to rescue the kingdom, but her her stepmother is truly trying to rescue Bianca as well in the process, which goes along very well with the themes of Christianity. The goal is not necessarily to vanquish the vampire per se, but to redeem the vampire. And uh, and whether or not the Witch Queen succeeds and how she goes about it, we will talk about. We'll discuss more in detail as we go through. So at the very beginning, we have the story of, as every good introduction does, it sets the stage, right? We meet the main characters, and we learn how they get to be where they are. And so the protagonist is the beautiful Witch Queen, who has hair of dark gold, very long, beautiful dark golden hair, and she has a dark gold mirror as well, and speaks and has conversations with the mirror, which form very, in a way, the mirror it's literally a framing device, or the framing device of the story, which is right, which is very clever, masterfully done by Miss Lee. And then we learn how the witch queen, the main character, she is not the first queen of the land. She had a predecessor who had long, flowing, ebony black hair, that hair that reached all the way to her ankles, and she wore a crimson gown. And while she was queen, there was a wasting disease that fallen upon the land. And before the first queen dies, she gives birth to a young girl, and this young girl is Bianca. And the mother, the first queen, takes pains to ensure that Bianca will be like her. And so this sets up the main conflict between the Witch Queen, who is a pious Christian, and Bianca, who shows signs of being something other than that. I'll say, Nathan, what are some of your thoughts on the opening part to this story, to the introduction?
Yes. I remember from when you first read us this story, in terms of the beginning of the story, what stuck out to me was that Tanith Lee never comes out outright and says the word vampire. You figure it out. And it was kind of it made me chuckle as I was hearing it the first time, reading it the first time, because I didn't figure it out until about a page in. And then they give us just enough clues that then when the king says, the queen wants to show Bianca her mirror. Please, Mama, said Bianca softly, I do not like mirrors. She is modest, said the king, and
Yeah.
delicate. She never goes out by day. The sun distresses her. And that was when it hit me. Oh. And then there's just that humor there. She's modest. the king said. That's why she doesn't like mirrors. So it's an entertaining story, and it's in the way that it deals with its premise.
It makes you thankful for the witch queen being around because you get the sense that the king, and it's not in a not in a mean spirited type of way, but you get the sense that the king does not have the tools in the toolbox needed to deal with deal with
Yes.
this problem, and so someone else is going to have to make a stab at it anyway. And so,
I might add to what Nathan said about her dislike of the mirrors and that slow kind of teasing out of information. The very first hint we get of it is when she asks, "Mirror, mirror, who is it you do not see?" And it says, "I do not see Bianca." And that's very strange the first time you hear that. Like, why would it be phrased that way? And it wasn't until this read around that I caught, like, oh, that is the mythos. That is why she cannot see it. That's what she's checking for.
Yeah.
mhm, right. Well said, Alex. What did you think of the introduction, the setting up of the story? What stood out to you?
I was just kind of taking in all of the different symbols of and or icon like iconography and whatnot, just trying to piece that together because you have a queen who's a witch, and yet she's the Christian. Interesting things going on like that, but it's they all kind of floating around together in this story. But yeah, the vampire angle didn't even really I wasn't focused on that. I wasn't piecing that together. Um because that is where where all that was heading, but I was just kind of taken in by the varied like elements.
I wonder, um, because that question of like why is the Christian called the Witch Queen? I'm wondering if anybody else calls her that, but or perhaps it's something that Bianca might have seen her as, like this fearful stepmother. Um, but yet it keeps the title because we're sort of getting it from, in an odd way, from Bianca's perspective. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
Well, it's like the idea of our idea of a witch in general is this, of course, this enigmatic, powerful person who knows things that normal people don't know, and probably is getting information and power from a different world, that one that we're not privy to, and in kind of a sad way, to Bianca, as how to say it, as a witch can appear that spiritually foreign and different to most other people. Bianca, being what she is, that's what the Christian queen appears to her as. That
Yeah,
the gulf is that big, you know, between them. And so, and as well, she does, we can talk later on, the queen does use magic, and lots of it, or at least something that appears to be magic. Uh, Nick, did you want to add something to that as well?
Yeah, I as I was reading this, just sort of the whole thing, and I'll relate this back to the identity of this queen, but there's just a lot of things that aren't what they appear to be. So we've got the queen who's a witch who transforms into the hag, who also has this salvific power that we'll see later. Bianca transforms herself into the likeness of the witch queen.
Mhm.
There are even the apple turns out to be poison, which actually turns out to be the body of Christ in a way. So there's just a lot of these bait and switches going on. So um, yeah, kind of like what you guys have been talking about, this witch queen might appear as a witch, but it's really hard to tell like who anyone is. And kind of relating back to your comment earlier, Henry, like whose side are we supposed to be on? It's really hard to tell, and I think that's part of the beauty of the story. And part of the thing that keeps you on the edge of your seat is just you're kind of not really sure what's going on this entire time. So um,
Right.
yeah.
I like how you mentioned how it builds up the suspense and keeps us on the edge of our seat because, from the beginning, because we don't know exactly who to cheer for. Unlike the original story, we know when we first hear of Snow White, we know to root for her and to hope that the Witch Queen fails in the Brothers Grimm story. But in this retelling, we don't really know. Uh, we don't know, and it makes for a very interesting story, and and that's the promise. That's Tanith Lee's promise that she sets out at the beginning. This is familiar yet unfamiliar. So you're going to be in for some surprises here, and she lives up to that promise all throughout the story, and she does so beautifully. I'd like to read a little part uh, from the beginning that talks about Bianca's conception and what her mother did, the ceremony her mother did to ensure Bianca turned out the way that she turned out to be. This woman, the first queen, had thrust open the glass casement on the winter garden where the old trees crouched in the snow. Then, taking a sharp bone needle, she had thrust it into her finger and shaken 3 bright drops on the ground. Let my daughter have, said the woman, hair black as mine, black as the wood of these warped and arcane trees. I love that description, warped and arcane trees. Let her have skin like mine, white as the snow, and let her have my mouth, red as my blood. And the woman had smiled and licked at her finger. It's another clue as to which creature she is. She had a crown on her head. It shone in the dusk like a star. She never came to the window before dusk. That's another clue. She did not like the day. She was the first queen, and she did not possess a mirror. She did not possess a mirror. And so the king is trying to make them, make Bianca and the new queen to get along. And the witch queen tries, I believe, 3 things that fail, which is a wonderful fairy tale number. 3 things to sort of bond with Bianca. And the first is, let's see, she asks Bianca to look into the mirror, which Bianca shies away from. She offers Bianca a tiny crucifix of golden filigree, which Bianca would not accept. She would not accept. And she, in her vampiric way, she charmingly sidesteps it. She says, "Oh, I do not like to think of our Lord dying on agony, in agony on his cross. She means to frighten me. Tell her to take it away." And then is that the queen offers her wild white roses from her garden, and Bianca would not accept the roses, saying that the thorns would tear her. And then lastly, the queen invites Bianca um, to be confirmed, by the church, so that she can take communion with her and with the king. And the king says, "No, no, no. My first wife had her own religion, and on her deathbed, she said that she wanted her daughter to be brought up in it, and so we have to honor the wishes of the dying." It's interesting. And the queen asks Bianca, "Should you not like to be blessed by the church, to kneel at the golden rail before the marble altar, to sing to God, to taste the ritual bread and sip the ritual wine?" And Bianca, accuses her of trying to get Bianca to betray her mother, and to and accuses the witch of tormenting her. So 3 times Three times the Witch Queen tries to bring Bianca into the fold by normal means, sort of, but to no avail. And then when Bianca turns 13 years old, the wasting sickness, which had left the land in peace for 13 years, suddenly began again. There was no cure. So we have two separate and fascinating and interconnected problems, and that is uh, the queen cannot bring Bianca into the fold, and the land becomes sick as Bianca turns 13, becomes a woman. And so we move on to the next part, which in the Witch Queen's first attempt to she takes on a more adversarial role towards Bianca, and she and the Witch Queen employs the huntsman. Does anyone have any thoughts on the huntsman? Phil, what did you think about him, his description and his character and part
Sure.
that involves him?
I think we might as well read it, because I did just piece this out as a bit of prose I really loved. He was a man, 40 years old, strong and handsome, and wise in the hidden lore of the forest, the occult lore of the earth. He would kill too, for it was his trade, without faltering. The slender, fragile deer he could kill, and the moon-winged birds, and the velvet hares with their sad, foreknowing eyes. He pitied them, but pitying, he killed them. Pity could not stop him. It was his trade. And we get a bit of that these sort of contrasts or things appearing as another, as Nick mentioned, with a hunter who does feel a genuine kind of remorse or pity for his victims. And I like this description or this exchange between the queen, the witch queen, and the hunter, where she's telling him who to kill, says the Princess Bianca. Oh, well, I'm sorry. No, she's not telling him who to kill. She's just kind of pointing her out to him. Yes, yes. So she says, "Who do you see?" Says, "It's the Princess Bianca," said the huntsman. "What else?" asked the witch queen. The huntsman crossed himself. "By our Lord, madam, I will not say, but you know who does not. The king does not, or he does." Uh, and this little exchange and that question of or he does, it reminded me a bit of King Arthur in the Once and Future King, and kind of he's got an inkling of what's going on with with Lancelot, um, but he never confronts him about it. He sort of turns a magnanimous blind eye to his wickedness, because he loves them both. And I see a little bit of that can be here. Like I don't think the king is just thick, and there may be a bit of a bit of a connection between our heavenly fathers, our heavenly kings, um, perspective towards us, where he knows what we're up to, or he knows where we were at before he came to save us. And yeah, it's kind of not that he's just like allows or is happy about it or anything, but or just winks at it, but he knows our state and he's patient and puts up with it. I thought that was an interesting exchange.
And then the way this whole thing ends up playing out, the queen says, "I will instruct you on what to say," and then he goes and he tries to deceive Bianca into basically walking into her death. But then she turns the tables on him, deceives him back, gets out of it. Um, he says something like, "We need to, like the queen is trying to kill you, so we need to escape. Follow me if you want to live." And then he lures her and has his knife to her throat, but then she changes her form into the Witch Queen, and then she says, "Good job. That was just a test in your past." And then,
Very
of
clever.
course,
Very,
then the huntsman does meet his end. He lets his guard down, and she does give him a fatal bite. But more things not appearing to not appearing what they seem, and also kind of turning the deception back against the huntsman and against the queen. Just very very shrewd how that turns out for Bianca.
yes.
And more examples of her cleverness, as we saw with the way that she evaded um, her stepmother's advancements.
Yeah, she is not one, Bianca is not one to be caught unawares, at least not easily. She's very crafty. And add on to what Nick said, she at the last minute she changes shape. She's a shapeshifter, which is a wonderful nod towards Bram Stoker's Dracula, who often Dracula is often changing his shape to be a wolf, to be a fog, to be a giant bat. Uh, it's a wonderful incorporation of this bit of the vampire legend. And not only does she change shape, but she changes shape into the person the huntsman wants the most.
Yeah, I
Because it
really like
out,
that
yeah,
part because I don't know, I don't like it when stories have people get killed just because there's a monster wandering about. But in this one, the huntsman makes the wrong choice. He chooses to believe her because he's giving into the temptation to love the king's wife. And it yeah, that's how temptation is. And once again, the author does not tell us she killed him because she's a vampire. But the author much more poetically says, let me find exactly the line here. She buried her face in his neck, and the pain of her kiss was the last thing he felt in this world.
so good. It's such a good description. Yes, and and it kind of lets you know about the huntsman's motivations too, where he at the same as he loves the queen, he knows that Bianca's not her daughter, right? She's the king's daughter, and he's already in a rivalry with the king for the queen because he loves the queen. He's almost a Lancelot character, and the queen knows this as well. The witch queen has to be privy to his motivations as well. It's not totally he's not completely noble. He's noble, but he's not completely noble, and so it makes him a uh, terrific candidate for the job. uh, too late. It's too bad that Bianca's aware of what he's uh, of his intentions as well, and she uses those against him masterfully. Alex, what did you think of this part with the huntsman, the first attempt?
I gotta say, when I read stories like this for the first time, I'm more operating on a initial emotional, like gut level reaction. So there are certain things that just go right over my head that everyone else probably picked up on, and I'm not even like paying attention to. It's just how it is. Sometimes I'm kind of just taking in the feel of a story. But I would have died. I would have been snookered by the vampire because I was like, oh wait, the queen was her. Oh no, that was the queen. Okay, I guess she's
Mhm.
and then I just moved on and I forgot about it because I'm just um it's kind of embarrassing, honestly. But yeah, I don't have much else to say, honestly, about it. You've all pointed out that's how lovely it is.
I like that point though, because you're right. When I was hearing it the first time and she changed her form into the queen, I wasn't sure for a minute what was really going on. It was like, well, I mean, we know the queen is a witch queen, so she
Yeah.
very well could have been doing that. Um,
Right.
the huntsman has right before his eyes a lot of evidence that it might be exactly what Bianca's saying, but um, it's complex, like the story, so it it's effective.
Right. Right. And what is the, and it's great how the telltale sign where that he could have, the huntsman could have used to save himself, to see through Bianca's trick, was when Bianca tells him, put away the knife, throw away the silly crucifix, right? Because the witch queen had given him that crucifix to protect him. And it was a crucifix that had been resting in a Bible, it's a flat silver. It's another harkening back to good old vampire lore.
Mhm.
It's a silver crucifix, and it was resting against the words in the Bible, "Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness." And so the witch queen is using the Bible to further enchant this cross, and she gives it to him. But Bianca's telling him, when she takes her form, she says, "Oh, just throw that silly thing away. Throw it away." You know, that should have sent up a red flag, no
Yes.
pun intended. But it,
Yeah.
it our poor audience, where they're going to be drowning in puns by the end of this if we're not too careful.
What a way to go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Does anyone have any other comments they'd like to make about the brief but fascinating struggle between the huntsman and Bianca? Any other details or themes or things they'd like to talk about?
Well, as a brief response to Alex, actually, I think we're coming at these readings, having heard it once, told quite beautifully by yourself, Henry, on a retreat, and then we're reading this again, kind of with the maybe a vague memory of the rest of the story and some of the themes that are going on, but I don't think stories are meant necessarily to be dissected in this manner. And I think just that initial emotional impact, that is how we're supposed to encounter a story in the beginning. And these are the little surprises that come along the way as you read or revisit, that you can say, now I see why he said that, or now I understand that. And that's something that we have as a joy, um, by ourselves. And in some ways, this is a bit of a spoiling of that, um, mystery, because we just happen to have five, excellent gentlemen here who are, have insight into some of these things and are writers themselves, and we're catching some of these, um, little mysteries, and each one is able to, um, put that out there. But and I think there's probably stuff that we've missed, but I don't think the point of a story is to just crack it like a code and then move on to the next one, but to hear it and enjoy it and see if, like, is it enjoyable on its own terms, even if I don't understand it all. That's sort of the tip that you get, that it's something worth listening to again or worth reading again. But speaking of emotional sequences, I was actually wondering if perhaps Alex would like to read, the description of the dwarf trees, which I find remarkably chilling and awesome. Or I could do it too. Seven asleep, seven awake, said Bianca. Wood to wood, blood to blood, thee to me. There came a sound like seven huge rendings, distant by the length of several trees, a broken road, an orchard, an underground passage. Then a sound like seven huge single footfalls, nearer and nearer. Hop, 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 hop. In the orchard, 7 black shudderings. On the broken road between the high ledges, 7 black creepings. Brush crackled, branches snapped. Through the forest into the clearing, pushed 7 warped, misshapen, hunched over, stunted things. Woody black, mossy fur. Woody black, bald mass. Eyes like glittering cracks. Mouths like moist caverns. Lichen beards. Fingers of twiggy gristle. Grinning. Kneeling. Faces pressed to the earth.
And Phil, if I might actually rewind a little bit further, uh,
Mhm.
right after the fatal kiss to the huntsman, the sky turns black, the forest turns blacker, and earlier the huntsman had pointed out foxes playing in a clearing, and it says there no foxes played in the clearing, and so it
Mm,
just seems like not only are these weird, hideous creatures showing up, but just everything is just a lot more grim now.
yes.
Ah, grim indeed. Grim indeed.
Eh,
But
eh,
Won't
eh.
deny that pun wasn't
that was
intended.
lovely. Sorry, I had to.
This
Did
is
I
a
have
game
to
with
though?
few returns.
Did I have to? Probably not, but I did. But I did. Um, but
Yeah, I'm sure. I-
beautifully said though, Nick. Before I, hijacked the, your observation with a golden, perhaps golden pun, pointing out, but no, you're right. Gives it an apocalyptic feel, doesn't it? Like the sky black. We have a vampire that's, um, terrorizing this kingdom. She, most likely, this is her first kill as a vampire. And the world, nature, the whole realm, nature is responding to it, and it's growing darker and more frightening. And trees are uprooting themselves and walking around, and they're terrifying looking trees too. Uh, they're
Oh,
not
these are
trees.
the dwarves.
Yes, yes, and they hop, hopping these hopping trees.
Yeah,
It's
Tanith
very
Lee is really making this her own. Like she's not trying to make like I don't know everything in analog, but at the same time she is like she's following some of this stuff, but it doesn't feel like she's like just checking all the boxes that people would recognize. It feels like
Right.
there's purpose behind it.
right. Now they're not. It's not necessarily a hi ho. It's off to work we go. Uh, episode
Hi
vehicle.
ho. Hi ho.
I,
Nathan, you get to voice all 7 in the movie.
Oh, good.
right.
Hey, that's public
Yes.
domain, right? So we are allowed to sing the songs if we want to.
I don't know.
I don't think the mouse can do
No,
anything about
no,
it now.
Snow White is not yet.
Oh, not
You
yet.
gotta wait
Okay, my
another
mistake.
decade and a half.
Oh,
You
all
you
right. I
get
jumped the
two
gun. My bad.
measures, Nathan. That's it.
Very good. Very good.
And so not only does the Witch Queen's first attempt, or you could say this is possibly her second attempt. The first one was the friendly set of, come on, let's be family, let's, be a Christian family together. That attempt fails. The huntsman attempt fails the second one. And not only does it fail, but it brings consequences, right? It brings consequences. Bianca is growing stronger. She's stronger in her magic. And it's a different, and it's a different type of magic than the Witch Queens. The Witch Queen often, while speaking with the mirror, she'll use Latin phrases to awaken the mirror. She'll use verses from the Bible to enchant items. She'll use talismans in a way for her magic, but Bianca's is different. It's a strange, almost natural type of magic. Bianca's powers in the trees and in the woods. She can darken the sky, and it gives, for me anyway, when I read it, it makes her even more threatening. right? Almost inevitable, almost unstoppable.
Hmm.
What she's doing for an otherworldly creature, she is hauntingly connected to the earth itself. Wouldn't you all say so? Or
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think this is a good time for me to mention that the first time I heard this story, I was very suspicious of the Witch Queen from the start, because she's the Witch Queen, she's the evil queen. And I had a lot of sympathy for Bianca, even when we knew she was a vampire, because it's like nobody wants to have a religion shoved down their throat. Then,
keep that expression in mind
yeah,
later on.
I will. And then, yeah, I did feel like the story up to this point, even though of course it's making you feel two things at once, I guess, of Bianca being genuinely dangerous and also being the one who people are trying to kill at the same time. So you kind of feel for her. I did. I do some, but also like, eh. So like, where's the how do we navigate this? And I love how the story ends up navigating that, but we're not there yet. So take it away, Henrik.
A good point. Thank you, Nathan. No, um, the Witch Queen sees that her attempts are failing, and she turns to very drastic measures. She calls in reinforcements, unlikely reinforcements. In fact, she summons the angel named Lucifer, and makes a very interesting bargain with him in order to save her kingdom. Let's see. Nick, would you like to, either read a portion of this next part of the
Yeah,
story or make comments on it?
I'd be
And
glad
also
to.
make comments on it. Sure.
Yeah, I would like to do both, actually.
Good. Excellent. That's what I was hoping for.
Yes. Let me figure out where I want to start. So the queen talks to the mirror. The mirror says, "I still see all but one," and the queen puts together that the huntsman did not accomplish the job. Four winds had burst through the chamber, and three archwinds. Cool fires had risen in parched oceans and the gray silver powders of time. The hands of the queen floated like folded leaves on the air, and through their dry lips the witch queen chanted, Pater omnipotens mittere digneris sanctum angelum tuum de infernus, which I looked up, and that's Latin for Almighty Father, deign to send your holy angel from hell. The light faded and grew brighter. There, between the hilts of the four swords, stood the angel Lucifer, somberly gilded in his face in shadow, his golden wings spread and blazing at his back. Since you have called me, I know your desire. It is a comfortless wish you ask for pain. You speak of pain, Lord Lucifer, who suffer the most merciless pain of all, worse than the nails in the feet and wrists, worse than the thorns in the bitter cup and the blade in the side. To be called upon for evil's sake, which I do not, comprehending your true nature, Son of God, brother of the Son. You recognize me, then. I will grant you what you ask. Yeah, this is another instance where I was just kind of completely confused about what was happening because she appeals to God to summon Lucifer to help her in this job, and later Lucifer some by some named Satan Rex Mundi, but nevertheless the left hand, the sinister hand of God's design. Um, but then also which we'll get to later, the tool that he uses to do this job also doesn't make sense based on who this entity is. So, um, yeah, yet another instance where it's just very difficult to wrap your mind around what's going on. You just feel like you're getting jerked in all different directions.
Or more likely who your sympathies should lie with.
Yes, I must say this is the most disturbing passage for me, and I'm not sure what kind of disturbing I'm supposed to feel. The first time I heard the passage, I was already suspicious of the witch, So the fact that she's calling on Satan and calling him God's son was confirming, oh my goodness, wow, yes, this is a problem. But then reading it the second time, where the witch seemed much less of a villain than I thought the first time I heard the story, um, I have a little concern that the author is means it when the author and when the narrator describes Satan as the left hand of God's design, or Rex Mundi, king of the world. Which isn't it's not he is the ruler of the air. The riches of the earth do belong to him. It's true. It's true. There's a little bit of a I don't know. The closest I can come to salvaging it is some Augustine that get lets me say that even Satan isn't 100% evil because he is originally created by God. So there is at least the fact that he exists there, then God lets him exist. But
Yeah. I mean, I
I
wouldn't I wouldn't try too hard to salvage it. I mean, don't hurt
okay,
yourself, but because
fair enough.
it's like you're saying, Henry, that Tanith Lee's using Christianity as a mythology. And
Yeah.
so for her, these things are just kind of like she'll combine them and do things. Although left hand of God, I mean, Lucifer was like the top angel,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
kind of like his like God's like right hand man in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it's yeah, like that I read as she's playing fast and loose with the mythos
Yeah,
there.
that makes sense.
Right. It's not necessarily theologically grounded, but what this, what she's, and there's a cost, right? There's a cost to this power, to speaking with this entity
Mm-hmm.
as she experiences, right? It's a terrible cost. She's Lucifer she wrenches, wonderfully wonderful verb, reminding of Jacob's hip being wrenched out of socket, uh, while wrestling with that angel. He wrenches lightning from the ether and he thunderbolts the woman in the chest. Uh, right, and uh, and she falls and she becomes this. She's no longer beautiful. She becomes what the book calls a withered, slobbering hag. And interestingly, during the transformation, the angels, the text says that describes the golden eyes of the angel, which were terrible, yet luminous with compassion, as the sword shattered and he vanished. It's just very fascinating and mysterious and uncertain. It's the type this it's the kind of stuff that fairy tales are made out of, this uncertainty, right? This uncertain, wild material that fairy tales are made out of is on full display here, I think. And and it highlights a very fascinating concept that this witch is willing to give up nearly everything, her beauty, her status, even, in a sense, maybe even her own righteousness. She's taking on these, she's becoming the villain, but to save the kingdom in a way. And it's a tremendous, it's a very, been very much a roundabout way to get there, but there is it's a self-sacrificial act that she's doing, I think, uh, and it works, and it works. She has, she has transformed herself with the help of angelic forces, because she recognizes that Bianca is not merely, she's a person, Bianca is, but she's more than a person. Bianca has something going for her. She has a strength, she has a power, that's going for her. And in order to match her, the witch queen's going to have to, she's going to have, she has to do something drastic so that Bianca can't just see right through her, what she's going to do. Um, yes. Any other thoughts on this fascinating conversation?
Well, one thing I noticed actually as I read it out loud just now, is that the Witch Queen appeals to the angel's empathy, and she even says like, "I don't have evil intentions," but saying that like you know pain more than any other being that's out there, and that's not something that we think of when we think of Lucifer or Satan or whatever. We think of someone who's being punished for something that something evil that they did and continued to be evil. But yeah, I just found it interesting this time that she, pain more than anyone else. Maybe you can help.
Well, it's specifically the pain of having to turn against the Lord, right? Um, to be called upon for evil's sake, I think is the way that she clarifies that sentence. But it is interesting, and I think I can see a bit of her taking on a bit of a Christ-like role in the situation, in which allowing sort of the forces of darkness to temporarily overcome her so that um, she can find a way to save her daughter.
Wonderful. And we are nearing the conclusion of this wonderful story. We're at the big showdown, at the confrontation. We learned what the Witch Queen has in mind with her new disguise, with her newly acquired abilities. Let's see. Alex, would you like to read a portion of this uh, confrontation between the Hag Queen, and Bianca, and just give some comments? They can be as specific or as general as you'd like for them to be. Or if not, you're welcome to, we can continue our Socratic
Yeah, let
circle
me
here and
find.
hand it off to someone else too. Beginning with Into the Core of the Forest, which is a wonderful
Yeah,
word
okay.
choice there. But anyway,
Yeah, all right. Into the core of the forest, even at noon, the sun never shone. Flowers propagated in the grass, but they were colorless. Above the black-green roof hung down nets of thick, green twilight, through which albino butterflies and moths feverishly drizzled. The trunks of the trees were smooth as the stalks of underwater weeds. Bats flew in the daytime, and birds who believed themselves to be bats. There was a sepulchre, dripped with moss. The bones had been rolled out, had rolled around the feet of 7 twisted dwarf trees. They looked like trees. Sometimes they moved. Sometimes something like an eye glittered or a tooth in the wet shadows. In the shade of the sepulchre door sat Bianca, combing her hair. A lurch of motion disturbed the thick twilight. 7 trees turned their heads. A hag emerged from the forest. She was crook-backed and her head was poked forward, predatory, withered, and almost hairless like a vulture's. Here we are at last, grated the hag in a vulture's voice. She came closer and cranked herself down on her knees and bowed her face into the turf and the colorless flowers. Bianca sat and gazed at her. Hag lifted herself. Her teeth were yellow palings. I bring you the homage of witches and 3 gifts, said the hag. Why should you do that? Such a quick child and only 14 years. Why? Because we fear you. I bring you gifts to curry favor. Bianca laughed. Show me. The hag made a pass in the green air. She held a silken cord worked curiously with plaited human hair. Here is a girdle which will protect you from the devices of priests, from crucifix and chalice and the accursed holy water. In it are knotted the tresses of a virgin, and of a woman no better than she should be, and of a woman dead. And here a second pass. And a comb was in her hand, lacquered blue over green, a comb from the deep sea, a mermaid's trinket to charm and subdue. Part your locks with this, and the scent of ocean will fill men's nostrils, and the rhythm of the tides their ears, the tides that bind men like chains. Last, added the hag, that old symbol of wickedness, the scarlet fruit of Eve, the apple red as blood. Bite, and the understanding of sin, which the serpent boasted of, will be made known to you. And the hag made her last pass in the air, and extended the apple, with the girdle and the comb, toward Bianca. Bianca glanced at the 7 stunted trees. I like her gifts, but I do not quite trust her. The bald masks peered from their shaggy beardings, eyelets glinted, twiggy claws clacked. All the same, Bianca, said Bianca, I will let her tie the girdle on me and comb my hair herself.
It's all very creative. The gifts and
Hmm.
the alternating that with the descriptions of the creepy plants around them, and it's a wondrous stretch the way it's so much to take in. And then the poetic language, eyelets glinted, twiggy claws clacked. It uh it gives a sense of tenseness too, because we know these trees are at the ready to protect Bianca if she chooses. So it's definitely a showdown, like Henry said.
And they're just ready. The trees, they're just waiting for a reason, right? They're poised, they're set, they're ready to go because who knows what these unnatural water, certainly specifically rainwater, that nourishes trees, but who knows what nourishes these things, these wicked things. Who knows what they're hungry for? But yes, yes, 3 gifts, and that's another beautiful nod to the fairy tale tradition. Important things come in threes all the time. And yes, the comb, the the girdle, the comb, and the apple. It's great how the the hag or the witch queen, we know she's the witch queen. Bianca doesn't, although she's not quite sure what's going on. The the hag appeals to her pride, doesn't she? She's like, well, of course I'm coming to bring you gifts. We're all scared of you. You're the top dog. We're here to give you tribute. And Bianca's still, being very much a princess. Still, she's still very much the mood of accepting gifts, and is ready to, especially gifts that could potentially help her growing franchise, vampiric franchise of luring people luring people to their doom. And so not only are they poetic gifts, but very practical, very useful tools that Bianca could use. Yes, and appealing to her pride, because Bianca, once, like we said, Bianca's far from unintelligent. She's not stupid. She's not a fool. But before taking a bite of the apple, she says, why don't you try it? Talking to the witch queen, why don't you try it first? And then once again, the hag talks with her in a way that the way that monsters understand each other. The hag says, it will be my pride. It will be my pride to tell my sisters I shared this fruit with you. She takes a bite of it. And so this beautiful, lush descriptions, the words here, I mean, it's wonderful, in a story that's centered about eating things, for good or for bad. This whole story is very much a feast, a feast of words in and of itself. Um, let's see, Phil, would you like to, read a portion of the description of the conclusion to this confrontation, or to read a portion or all of it. What happens after Bianca accepts her third gift? And please share your comments, your thoughts and impressions, and then choose another of the panel to keep us going around the circle here.
Goodness gracious, you gave me the hardest one to choose from because from here on out, it just like to say that it comes to a conclusion is an understatement. It's more like it just spirals up into the air and then leaves you there. Well, I suppose I'll start from when the prince comes to see her.
Or even before that, what happens with Bianca when after she does accept that gift?
Oh,
That's an important part leading up to the prince's arrival.
oh, sure.
Hmm.
Okay, well, I'll just say, then Bianca took the apple and bit into it. Bianca screamed and choked. She jumped to her feet. Her hair whirled about her like a storm cloud. Her face turned blue, then slate, then white again. She lay on the pallid flowers, neither stirring nor breathing. The seven dwarf trees rattled their limbs and their bare, shaggy heads, to no avail. Without Bianca's art, they could not hop. They strained their claws and ripped at the hag's sparse hair and her mantle. She fled between them. She fled into the sunlit acres of the forest, along the broken road, through the orchard into a hidden passage. The hag re-entered the palace by the hidden way, and the queen's chamber by a hidden stair. She was bent almost double. She held her ribs. With one skinny hand, she opened the ivory case of the magic mirror. Speculum, speculum, Dei gratia. Whom do you see? I see you, mistress, and all in the land, and I see a coffin. Whose corpse lies in the coffin? That I cannot see. It must be Bianca. The hag, who had been the beautiful witch queen, sank into her tall chair before the window of pale cucumber green and dark white glass. Her drugs and potions waited, ready to reverse the dreadful conjuring of age the angel Lucifer had placed on her, but she did not touch them yet. The apple had contained a fragment of the flesh of Christ, the sacred wafer, the Eucharist. The witch queen drew her Bible to her and opened it randomly, and read with fear the word resurcat. Should I stop there or perhaps continue?
Of course, I mean, I think that would be you know, a great stopping point. What do you think? What were your thoughts, feelings, impressions, observations, Phil, as when read this part most recently, or when you heard it the first time?
Yeah, I mean I do like that we see sort of the trees pounce on the witch as she makes a narrow escape because now they can't hop anymore, and they're basically just standing around this coffin as sentries from this point on. But my goodness, this having the apple having been shown to Bianca as like the original apple that had the fruit of knowledge and the symbol of wickedness and the understanding of sin. And then having the Eucharist tucked inside of that is such a incredible theological package that somehow through the fall there is the body of Christ at the center of it is amazing. And I see you bringing back Nathan's words, not wanting to have religion, cram down someone's throat, and here it is, the master class. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure what else much to say on on this portion. But
I would mention that I like the way that the author once again makes us wait to figure out what's going on. The queen because the queen takes a bite and Bianca takes a bite. And Bianca's affected, but the queen does not die on the spot, clearly. So it really made me wonder, and I'd forgotten. So the second time reading it, it's like, what was it? I'd forgotten what it was. And Lee waits till the very last moment to tell us the apple contained a fragment of the flesh of Christ, the sacred wafer, the Eucharist. And yeah, it is a remarkable reversal that um the way I read it, it is the which says that it's the original apple of sin, which caused the death of the first man and woman, but instead it's this it's the holy food, and that causes the death of of our vampire protagonist here. Um, it's sort of a mirror image reversal of the good and the evil, but it's quite complex and a lot to sink your teeth into.
Indeed. See, Nathan, see, at this point, it has to be on purpose. With Nathan's trying to bait
Yeah,
me here.
yeah.
But unlike Bianca, I will not take the
You will
bait
not
here. I
take the
will not
bait.
take
That's
He's
good. That's
holding
good.
out the golden apple of the pun, the apple. But I see through his plans. But no, that's right. I mean, I confess I was astounded as well when I first read this. It's a reversal. It's a very abrupt reversal of fortune. But it ends on we're not, in a sense, we're not out of the woods yet, are we? Because it Bianca's taken the bait, and the Witch Queen has escaped with her life. But when she gets back, she returns to her room. She opens her Bible, opens it randomly, which earlier, many years ago, the church condemned that practice. A lot of people do that. Actually, they might not know what to do in a given situation, so they'll take their Bible and they'll just open it, close their eyes, and point, and whatever they wherever their finger lands is what they think that.
That's a very
God,
interesting detail. I'm glad you mentioned that because I, yeah, that line that she opened it randomly. I mean, it lets me still feel like she's not just out for good intentions here. She's not just, oh, I want to save my people. There's also the extent to which she's protecting her crown from the this person who just put her own crown on. And this is the first time we see the Witch Queen do something not premeditated, I feel like. It's the first time she's not doing, I don't know, magic is always like, I'm gonna say the spell and then make the forces do this. And this time she just opens the Bible randomly. She's like she doesn't know what she's doing.
right.
And it feels like that's where the yeah, it's like this see if I can say it, it's this idea that the wondrous good that's there almost blossoms up of its own accord, which gives us the rest of the story.
Yes, yes, and we don't know, and she doesn't know either if her efforts will be successful ultimately or not. With all this fiddling around with the Bible and with magic and
Hmm.
making strange deals and everything with angels, the word that she lands on is resurrectat, something like resurrection. I don't know if that's an actual Latin word or not,
Yeah, I
but
looked it up. I think it is like he
oh, really?
resurrects or she resurrects. Yeah.
Yes. And so, we are thrown forward in time, right, to see the ultimate resolution of the story. We've seen the resolution of this main conflict here between the two, this personal conflict, but even at the end, there's a lot of uncertainty, right? We're three-fourths the way into the story, and we're still uncertain. We're still on shaky ground here, um, which
Yes.
is which is marvelous. It's marvelous to come across a story that surprises you to this extent. And I remember J.R.R. Tolkien, because of course we need to throw in an Inklings reference here. Once described finding a new language as finding a new wine, type of wine. He loved learning languages so much, and uh, for me anyway, and I'm sure many of y'all here, my colleagues, and also the audience listening, has come across a similar uh, pleasure of discovery when finding a novel or a short story or a series of books
Or
that
an author, a new author.
or a
Yeah.
new author, right, whose writing is kind of intoxicating, intoxicating in the best way possible. So, first of many salutes to Tanith Lee here.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm sold. I mean, I'm already like had recommend a lot of good recommendations for her work, and I'm glad that I already have a few of her books on my bookshelf that I've come into possession of, and I'm probably gonna bump those up to reading sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
She's not easy to come to get a hold of for her stories these days, at least
Yeah,
in a
I don't
good
know if you could
edition.
even find. I mean, I know she was publishing like pretty late, but I don't know if like any of that stuff is in Barnes and Noble even. It's the kind of stuff we gotta hunt for at the used bookstores.
I will say on this little section that I read, um, again on kind of opening the Bible randomly, and like that she does this before she touches her potions that are supposed to reverse the conjuring of age that Lucifer placed on her. It seems like she really is exhausted from this encounter. It's like she sinks into her chair. She's gone up all those steps and all those hidden passageways to get there, and it may be. It seems like what a lot of people would do even today, if they've gone through some tremendous stress or trauma or some ordeal. They don't really know what to do at that point, and the fact that she just and they will sometimes open the Bible and kind of like looking for some comfort, but not exactly knowing where. She reads what I think she sees as terrifying because of the word this resurrection, thinking that the evil is going to resurrect, but it ends up being the most comforting word that it possibly could be, because it's going to be um well, not just the good part of her um resurrecting, but even it seems like getting a new chance at even her childhood, which I think we can get into a little bit. um
yes, and before we do, real quickly, and of course, anyone who'd like to read this next part is welcome to. This beautiful, beautifully, all of it's beautiful, but this especially powerful part. I want to give one more observation for everyone. How that remember what Bianca and her mother have in common is that while they are alive and well and powerful, that there is a wasting disease that comes upon the land. And it appears that even though the witch queen has thwarted Bianca at least as much as she can, um, she herself, by becoming this hag, right, she has experienced this wasting disease as well that Bianca and her mother cast upon the land. And she has drugs and potions to reverse it in this particular instance, but she knows, even before she goes for them, she reaches for the Bible to see what's going to happen next, because she knows that if there is no long-term cure for this problem, she might as well not take the potions. She might as well not take the medicines to restore herself, because there still will be this wasting illness that's uh, that's upon the land.
Yeah,
And
spending time in this part of the story has helped me notice that the first thing she does when she comes in is she asks the mirror, "Whom do you see?"
yes.
And it's after the mirror's response, the mirror still doesn't see Bianca, that she sits down
Mhm.
in the chair and she doesn't take the potions and she opens the Bible. Kind of an exercise in trying to get in somebody else's head or understand from
Yes,
their outer actions and what their motivation is. It makes me wonder if she was hoping that this would at least make Bianca visible into the land of the living or fix whatever the issue is. But like you're saying, seems like it hasn't been fully resolved yet.
right.
So
And what
yeah.
else can she do? You know, she's come
Hmm.
to the end. What more, what is holier, more powerful than the Eucharist? Right. You know, if this doesn't do it,
Hmm. Hmm.
what can be done at this point? Except that we don't know. She doesn't know, except that it's going to involve a resurrection of some sort. She's for good or ill. This young woman will not stay in the coffin. And who hasn't read for us in a while? Would anyone who would like to read this lovely part at the end of our story?
I'd be honored to.
Sure.
I'm trying to decide how far to read. Should I just read from when the prince arrives to the end, or just like half of that?
As much as you want, as much as you want. So
Okay, yeah, it's just so
we're in no
wondrous. So
hurry.
Bring it home for us, Nathan.
I'll bring it home.
Mhm.
Thank you. Who is that lying under the trees? The prince asked as he rode into the clearing. He seemed to bring a golden moon with him, shining about his golden head, on the golden armor, and the cloak of white satin blazoned with gold and blood and ink and sapphire. The white horse trod on the colorless flowers, but the flowers sprang up again when the hoofs had passed. A shield hung from the saddle bow, a strange shield. From one side it had a lion's face, but from the other a lamb's face. The trees groaned and their heads split on huge mouths. "Is this Bianca's coffin?" asked the prince. "Leave her with us," said the seven trees. They hauled at their roots. The ground shivered. The coffin of ice glass gave a great jolt, and a crack bisected it. Bianca coughed. The jolt had precipitated the piece of Eucharist from her throat. Into 1,000 shards the coffin shattered, and Bianca sat up. She stared at the prince, and she smiled. "Welcome, beloved," said Bianca. She got to her feet and shook out her hair and began to walk toward the prince on the pale horse. But she seemed to walk into a shadow, into a purple room, then into a crimson room, whose emanations lanced her like knives. Next she walked into a yellow room, where she heard the sound of crying, which tore her ears. All her body seemed stripped away. She was a beating heart. The beats of her heart became two wings. She flew. She was a raven, then an owl. She flew into a sparkling pane. It scorched her white, snow white. She was a dove. She settled on the shoulder of the prince and hid her head under her wing. She had no longer anything black about her, and nothing red. "Begin again now, Bianca," said the prince. He raised her from his shoulder. On his wrist there was a mark. It was like a star. Once a nail had been driven in there. Bianca flew away up through the roof of the forest. She flew in at a delicate wine window. She was in the palace. She was 7 years old. The witch queen, her new mother, hung a filigree crucifix around her neck. "Mirror," said the witch queen, "whom do you see?" "I see you, mistress," replied the mirror, "and all in the land. I see Bianca."
And there was much rejoicing.
Yes, indeed.
Uh, it's wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Nathan. So, Nathan, since you did the honor, thank you for giving us that wonderful reading. What are your thoughts, feelings observations? What do you want to note? There's so
Yeah, that
much to note here.
there is that last page is that prose is just as good as it gets for me. That
Mhm.
the description of the prince's horse's hooves and the flowers coming back up after they're stepped on, it makes me think a great deal of I think of the I can't even remember what he's called, but in Princess Mononoke, the great spirit who seems to bring life wherever he goes, and the um then the way that Bianca's taken through rooms of three colors and becomes three birds, these stages and the pain she experiences and then the regret she expresses all give a sense that she's being changed, and that her evil isn't just, oh well, it's okay. No, she really seems to experience what it costs. But then there's a reference to what it really cost, all it really cost, which is the nail mark on the prince's hand. And um yes, it's quite beautiful in every way. It's as good as it gets.
And to piggyback off of that, and Henry, you mentioned one of the Inklings. I'd like to mention another. In C.S. Lewis and the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, we have Eustace turning into a dragon,
Hmm.
and Aslan is able to redeem him, but it does come at great cost. It's very painful. He has to dig away all of the scales and have this lengthy process of digging into the dragon to get Eustace to come out. And so this is what that reminds me of a little bit, where Bianca does go through a great deal of pain, having the Eucharist stuck in her throat and choking and smoke and all of this stuff and being frozen and then having the journey where she turns into the dove at the end. Yeah, just salvation is not painless, um, and yeah, this story illustrates that point quite well.
Beautifully said, indeed.
Yeah, this is the part where when you read it to us, it's just opened up everything in my mind like wow. Because all up to now we've just had ambiguously bad good characters, or like we're sympathizing with the bad one, but she's Snow White, and the Wicked Witch is getting rid of the evil, but kind of good and kind of it's just. But then we get this unambiguous good, which is Christ Himself who comes and makes everything right in all the right ways. It's just an absolute breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I almost like it's you kind of primed to expect a switcheroo, but no, thank God that doesn't happen.
Hmm.
I honestly I'm like this would really be this would be a great movie.
Oh yeah, I was thinking the same when I read
Yeah,
it today.
like do something really really cool and stylish. And I think it'd be great too because it's you don't know what to make of it at first really, and then you're going through it and you come out and like it on the surface you almost would think it's like you're gonna have your subversive retelling of fairy tale, but it's way more complicated than that. But it's rich and it's not like shallow because of that. The same way as it's something that Guillermo del Toro can't do. Um,
That's funny.
I would hope that he never touches this story.
Because it's not, it does it bucks against many trends. It incorporates many things, but it stays itself, wonderfully itself. It's
Mhm.
the it's sort of the end that at this point it's better than what we could hope for, right? It's even better than what we could hope
Mhm.
for,
Hmm.
which is what the feeling of the gospel should always give us. It's not only a prince that comes to save her, it's the prince, right? It's the Prince of Peace. And he's not on a duplicitous mission like the huntsman, who actually really just loves the witch queen. But the prince loves Bianca, right? He loves her. He's and he also loves the witch queen, but not in a, not in the erotic sense of love, but in this self-giving love. There are many things I'm going to. I encourage the readers, encourage everyone to read this passage. Over a few times, you'll find so many connections. I just want to not to strip the mystery from the story, but I want to point out one thing in particular, just one thing that in Nathan's reading stood out to me in particular. All of it, it's all beautiful, but especially the part where she's walking through these series of rooms that are different colors. And then lastly, it says, next, she walked into a yellow room where she heard the sound of crying, which tore her ears. She walked into a yellow room where she heard the sound of crying, which tore her ears. I will not, and I don't ever want to, I don't want to authoritatively say this is what it means, but possibly, dear readers or dear listeners, humor me here. If in biblical imagery, where do we have a yellow room? Well, we have Solomon's temple, Solomon's palace, which is all gold. It's gold inlaid. And what happens in one of the episodes in Solomon's palace, where you have two mothers, who are arguing over a child, right? Until eventually King Solomon says, "We'll just cut the child in half." And then it's the mother, to determine, whose mother the child actually belongs to, and it's the mother that forfeits her, that gives her up. Perhaps won't say definitively, but perhaps this particular room, where Bianca hears all this crying, it's her. She's hearing this. She's in this scenario where she also has two mothers who have been wrestling over throughout the whole story, and it's up, just like Solomon, it's up to the prince to determine who she belongs to in the end, truly. And so, and then of course, and she becomes a raven, and she becomes an owl, and these are two unclean birds in the Bible. They're often they symbolize judgment. They eat carrion. They're meat eaters. They eat corpses very often. But she's transformed from that into a dove, and the dove that, and another wonderful, just in case, it's part of the buildup, as Nathan pointed out, Tanith Lee's wonderful way of building up, these, the reveal of what's happening or who are these characters. This is a prince that doves are comfortable landing on. This is another hint, even before the nail mark. Then after that, there's no doubt of who this prince is. Yes, just spectacular. Spectacular through and through. And if you feel like you've been on a, we open talking how succinct and, at the proper length the story is, but my goodness, after you've read it all, you feel like you've been on a journey, and you have, it looked, the path, like the woods, is meandering. We didn't really know where it's going to end, but you arrive safely home at the end, and just wonderful relief, like, whew, wow, that was a full trip, and it sure was worth it. It sure was
Yes.
worth it.
I want to point out that this story was originally put in a compilation anthology story collection called Red as Blood, or Tales from the Sisters Grimmer. Um, and I really want to find this now, because the original cover of this edition had a great painting by Michael Whalen, and That should probably be the thumbnail for this video, but I'll share it so all of you can see it, and hopefully the viewers will have some access. But there's, yeah, I want to read the other stories in that book now because it sounds like there's some the approach to these revisitings of the fairy tales is a worthwhile one.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, now that we've reached the
Also,
end of
I would say
please,
the
yes,
the
please, Alex.
current cover for the if you go on Amazon, if you look this book up on Amazon, the current cover is disgraceful. I'm just gonna say that. If you can,
So
find the
often the
original
way.
DAW edition with the Michael Whalen cover,
Wonderful.
which
Thank you.
seems to be a little already in the collector's market side of things, unfortunately.
Wonderful. Well, closing remarks, dear friend. Now that um, we've reached the end of the story here. Main takeaways. We begin with impressions. We end with takeaways. Don't just eat fruit that random hags offer you. I mean, that's an always a safe bet. Just
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting, Henry.
you
You mentioned before, um, trying to get inside the mind of the witch queen. Like, what's more powerful than the Eucharist? Like, what? Like, if that doesn't do it, what else? And I think, the fact that she receives it unwillingly and we would use the phrase unworthily may be why initially this kills her, which is a strong warning in especially in the early church, and that she might be drawing from that. And it's not until I think she meets the presence, like, directly before her, that's actually able to that he's actually able to change her and give her a true resurrection. And when it says here, sorry, it just had yeah, it says that the jolt had precipitated the piece of Eucharist from her throat. I'm not sure if it went out or in at that moment, and what exactly her intentions were when she approaches the prince. If it's like, welcome, beloved, as really has just immediately fall in love with him, or if she was planning to do to him as she did to the hunter, but then it's stopped in her tracks, um, and completely overpowered by um, this experience that she has walking towards him. It's just something that caught my eye as Nathan was reading over it again.
right. And you mentioned, is she wanting to, seduce the prince and drink his blood, right? Well, that's the second part of communion. And which lends to the wonderful inevitability of this ending. And begins with, she takes the first part unknowingly, and if she knew, probably unwillingly, she takes the bread. And then and I would like to also mention, I know readers would have caught this too, but the as a dove, when she flies up through the roof of the forest, the way that she comes into the palace, she flies in at a delicate wine window.
Yes, I noticed that too.
You see that? A delicate wine window. You have the bread and the wine. You see, you have a full communion right there. Yes, and this is a prince, unlike the huntsman and other men, all other people. This prince is one who's actually has his blood on offer, right? Uh, take and drink. This is the blood of the new covenant shed for
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
And so you don't have to seduce and steal and and bite and connive your way to it. It's there. It's offered, uh,
Hmm.
offered freely. Wonderful. Any others, dear friends, as we wrap up this jolly good time of a
No,
podcast?
it's
Takeaways.
it exists in my head as a jewel, a ruby, as just this wonderful little gem of a story.
All right. Well, thank you all very much, and thank you to our dear listeners for enjoying this conversation with us. We're excited um, for the next one, so stay tuned. There will be more 707's podcasts and discussions uh, coming as soon, coming around the corner, coming around the bend as soon as we can deliver them. So, um, Alex, would you like to deliver our official closing statements?
All right, well, I guess that'll do it for us at the Beagle and Child this evening. By the time you hear this, it'll probably be 2026. It will, I know. But from beyond, from the future or out of the past, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, Merry Christmas, everyone.